Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Everything is Bad New Fangled Motion Picture Show.
Welcome, one and all, to the newest episode of the Everything's Bad Newfangled Motion Picture Show. I'm Niall.
And I'm Nolan.
And today we're here to review the latest in DC's never-ending crusade to ruin everything they had going for them in movie form.
Wonder Woman 1984.
Yep. So, before we get too far into it, I do want to say this is going to be a spoiler-free review. And then we're going to give you a spoiler warning, and then go more in-depth into it after that. And I will say there is some potential spoilers here, because there's some things that we were definitely expecting to happen and didn't happen. Not like didn't happen in the way we expected, just sort of left hanging with questions. Yeah, so we'll preface this with, preface this. Why did I say weird? Preface this with, we don't read DC comics. We're not super steeped in DC character lore.
We're more Marvel people.
Yeah. That being said, we have seen every DC movie, right? Basically since like Batman Begins, right?
Yeah.
All the like the Hollywood blockbuster movies.
We're fans of the DC animated stuff. Like we watch. I grew up with Batman the Animated Series and.
Yeah, and that stuff's all great.
Stuff like
but that's
so most of our DC knowledge comes from the movies and the cartoons.
Yeah,
not
so
reading the comics.
So if we criticize something or get something wrong about Wonder Woman, sorry. I will say we also we liked the first or the previous Wonder Woman movie. Was it just called Wonder Woman? Did it have a subtitle?
It's just called Wonder Woman.
All right. Yeah, that was, I believe, did we review that for this channel?
Yes.
All right, then I'm sure what we said was probably the best DC cinematic universe movie yet. And that still holds true. I would put this movie sort of like tied with Justice League?
I don't even remember enough about Justice League. It's like not fresh in my mind. I just remember it being a very meh movie.
Had Steppenwolf in it.
Yeah, I remember the movie being very meh. Yeah, I still think the first Wonder Woman is the best of the DC cinematic universe movies.
Probably followed by Shazam.
Yeah, Shazam and then Aquaman.
Yeah. But yeah,
Shazam was actually a surprise at how good it was.
Yeah.
It was just a fun movie.
But what's weird about it though is like this has the same people making it, right? It's Patty Jenkins.
I don't know about the writers or not. Probably the same writers. I just I feel like where this movie lacks is it has some lazy writing and it has some really like cringy moments.
It has some really cringy moments and it has a lot of things. So like one of the biggest flaws with this movie to me is the fact that this movie it doesn't establish its own rules very well. So like going into a superhero movie or a sci-fi movie or whatever, there's certain things you're gonna have to just accept, right? Like that this woman is incredibly strong and long-lived and is basically impervious and has this lasso, right? It's like, so there's like certain things you can expect, but you always expect it to to take place within a set of rules that need to be maintained. Otherwise, you run into Ant-Man problems. Right.
Yeah, right.
So the problem is not even necessarily that it breaks its own rules.
It's not clear what those rules are to begin with.
Right, and so I couldn't tell you if it does break those rules or not.
Yeah, and it's mostly to do with the villain's powers.
Yeah.
And we can get into that in the spoiler section. But, yeah, it just really unclear on things. There was...
Real quick, so to answer your question, it doesn't look like any of the writers, except for Patty Jenkins. Oh wait, no, she didn't even do any of the writing on the first one. Never mind. Yeah, none of the writers came back for this movie, and that's probably the problem.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem stems from the script.
Yeah, like
I don't think except for like some of the. Yeah, I mean, I think it basically mostly comes from the script. I don't think any of it is, or most of it is not like Patty Jenkins' fault. She's already proved she's a decent enough director.
Yeah.
With the first Wonder Woman, and then as far as like just direction goes in this, it's mostly pretty good. But I think I'm not gonna say that they took too lighthearted an approach, because it was fine. You know, a lighthearted approach is fine. It's just some of the stuff is so cheesy.
Right, and I think in general DC hasn't found the good balance of like lighthearted whimsy and like serious superhero action that Marvel does so well.
Yeah, and sometimes the hero themselves sort of dictate that tone. Like Batman's always going to be dark.
Right. Batman's always going to be dark and brooding.
But I think Zack Snyder made Superman too dark.
Yeah. And then this movie, like, Gal Gadot is not herself like in any way a comedic actress.
Right.
And so like all the funny that's going on in this, like, she's basically not really a part of. It's basically all comes down to Chris Pine.
Yeah, and a little bit of Kristen Wiig.
Yeah.
And Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. Well, and like we know Chris Pine is funny, but I mean, it's just weird when it's like this dude is being funny and everyone else is being serious right now. And like I know we've criticized DC in the past for like, oh, everything's got to be so serious all the time, and it gets sort of obnoxious.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it well in this, because like there's stuff in there that I'm like, I know this is supposed to be funny, but I'm not laughing. I don't think there was anything in there really that I was laughing at. Like none of the jokes landed as that funny to me, because it's all been done before. And I don't think it's gonna spoil anything to tell you that they just like, remember how weird people dressed in the 80s is kind of the level of humor, is like basically what most of the jokes amount to.
Most of the humor comes down to Chris Pine's reactions to the, Man at a Time stuff, but really not even a lot of that was humorous or even played for laughs. And then if you saw the trailer,
you saw all the jokes.
You saw most of the joke. Most of the humor is like that sequence of him, like them picking an outfit for him. You saw that like 100% of that in the trailer.
Yeah.
So that's like the funniest part of the movie, and it was there in the trailer.
Yeah.
But so yeah, there's not a lot of jokes, but it still has a lighter tone than basically every other DC movie, even the first Wonder Woman. I mean, being set in World War I, that was a fairly dark tone.
And that's fine in that, because like,
and it worked there.
It worked there, and I don't think that you could pull off anything other than taking that subject as very serious.
Right.
And so, but yeah, I don't know. It's just like it like worked with Shazam, because
Shazam's a silly character.
He's a silly character. The guy is actually like the mind of a child, and that actor is just a really funny guy. I've seen him in interviews and on podcasts and stuff. That dude's just really funny. I forget his name.
Zach something, right?
Could be. But that dude's just actually like genuinely really funny. And so he does it well. And that being said, like, I don't know, this movie. So in addition to like the tone feeling weird, and not just feeling weird for a DC movie, but feeling weird for a superhero movie, for what we've come to expect from superhero movies, and the having issues of not just like, yeah, we like it doesn't follow its own rules, but not actually knowing what the rules are. In addition to that, it feels weird in the DC cinematic universe because it didn't seem to do anything in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, there were no connections to any other characters. Like, if this were a Marvel movie, they absolutely would have thrown something in to connect it to another character.
Yeah.
A hint. I know it's set in 1984, and the other or the other DC movies are set in modern day, but they could have had like one of the characters as a child, and just like, had some scene where you're like, oh, that's Bruce Wayne as a kid, or whatever it is. Marvel would have absolutely done something to tie it back to the other movies or some other movie, and this didn't do that. It was basically a standalone movie. Other than the knowledge of what happened to Steve Trevor, it could stand alone from the first movie.
Yeah.
Even. And because you get a little bit of, you've seen the trailer, you get a little bit of Diana, as a child, almost a little bit of origin story there. Not a full-on origin story, but enough there that you could establish who she is and where she comes from.
Right, enough that you can look at and go, oh, okay, she's like from this Amazonian culture.
Right, and then she's super powerful because even as a child, she competes in their like Olympics versus adults, and on their level. So she's obviously very powerful, and so that's all you really need to know. And so this movie almost stands alone as its own movie. Other than, and then they do a good enough job of explaining, her past with Steve Trevor, even that you don't really need to have seen that first movie, even.
Yeah.
And there's just really nothing to tie it back to any other movies other than the first Wonder Woman movie.
Yeah, and this movie, so it makes the movie itself feel inconsequential.
Yeah.
As a result, and like, there is no movie in Marvel that doesn't pay off. And who knows, maybe when what's the next DC movie? Aquaman, right? The next Aquaman movie?
Yeah, she's not in it though. I was looking at Gal Gadot's profile, and like in the works as far as DC movies go, there's another Justice League movie, and then another standalone Wonder Woman movie.
Okay. So,
but she's not in the next Aquaman, which should be the next DC. The next DC movie.
Right, because they canceled that Batman movie, right? Because Ben Affleck pulled out. Oh no, they recast him, right? Oh yeah, he's Pattinson now.
So are they gonna use Robert Pattinson for that? Because I thought that was just another Batman.
Or is that movie. Has nothing to do with the DC?
I think it has nothing to do with the DC cinematic universe. It's just a standalone Batman movie.
I don't even know at this point.
Confusing for all the DC movies what is actually part of the cinematic universe
like,
and not.
Because, like, I've seen people who suggest that Shazam isn't, but Shazam also makes direct reference to Man of Steel, right?
I think so.
So, like, I don't know. Are they just gonna, like, say, like, yeah, that was like a what if sort of thing, kind of like how Marvel sort of dismissed the Avengers shows on Netflix?
Yeah, Zachary Levi, right?
Levi, yeah, that's the guy.
That's Shazam. Okay. Or Captain Marvel.
No, definitely not that.
Definitely not Captain Marvel.
Yeah, they're not going to get away with ever using that name again.
Nope. That's the whole thing. If you don't know what that is, go look that up.
Yeah. So yeah, just Google search Shazam Captain Marvel and you'll find out. So in addition to all this, so you're like, okay, so like the screenplay or the plot is a problem. It's inconsequential in the grand scheme of the DC universe. Well, at least it's got cool action scenes, right?
Nah.
Not really. Doesn't even have that going for it.
The action scenes are not that good.
Yeah, like there's a couple of things that happen that are cool.
The coolest action scene is that chase sequence.
Right, but there's something that happens in that we were just like, all right, I'm out. I'm done with this action sequence now.
Yeah. And then that also is another thing with like, well, what are the rules?
Right. Oh no, there was something else. I know what you're thinking of. There was something that was definitely like a wait a minute. I thought.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, they didn't, I guess, explicitly say that, but didn't they? But no, there was something that happens that just from like an action sequence is just stupid.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think it's gonna spoil anything by saying Wonder Woman does some dumb shit with the lasso in this movie.
I've seen people who are like Wonder Woman fans going, her lasso can't do that.
Yeah. So
I've seen reviews where people are like, wait a minute, her lasso could never do that in the comic books.
Yeah. So that's
another thing. They don't establish lasso rules very well either. Lasso just does whatever Wonder Woman needs it to do.
Yeah.
Is part of the problem.
Yeah, and but yeah, like the main action sequences, and you've seen these in the trailer. There's the chase scene down the desert highway. There's the fight in the mall, which, if you've been to the theater at all in like the last year and a half, you've seen that because there's the like you shouldn't pirate movies because you wouldn't watch Wonder Woman on a screen the size of your phone.
Yeah. And it's all footage from that mall scene.
Yeah. And so there's that. There's the stuff opposite Kristen Wiig in the White House.
Yeah.
And
I think it's all they
well, I guess the competition at the beginning, the Amazon Olympics is.
Yeah, that was fine.
Yeah.
For what
it wasn't a fight.
Yeah, it wasn't a fight.
It was just like
the fight
cool acrobatics and stuff.
The fight sequences that just kind of not that great.
Yeah.
So yeah, our review is it's just kind of a meh movie. I don't think it was terrible.
So
it has some redeeming qualities, but it's
they basically revolve around Chris Pine and Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. They're definitely the best performers in this. Although I'm not a Gal Gadot hater. Like there's people out there who just think she's a terrible actress. I thought she was perfectly fine.
I thought she was fine. I just think Wonder Woman's not a particularly interesting character, but she's always kind of a no nonsense. Like at least again, going back to our knowledge of the DC universe mostly stems from the movies and the animated shows. From watching that Justice League cartoon that was
she's
on
pretty
in like
no-nonsense.
the early to mid 2000s, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
She was pretty no nonsense in that and very straightforward, like didn't want to put up with the Flash's shit sort of thing.
Right.
And so like I thought she was fine for that. And I mean like Gal Gadot looks like she could kick most people's asses anyway, so she's got that going for her too. Like she looks the part. So yeah, it's just this movie just really fell flat in a lot of ways, which is disappointing because like we were saying, the previous Wonder Woman movie, the 2017 Wonder Woman movie, is a good movie.
Yeah, I think but yeah, like I said, the Chris Pine and Pedro Pascal gave really good performances. I think Chris Pine is great because I don't know, like a lot of actors could have pulled off that role of like, hey, I'm the man at a time. Everything around me is just wondrous, and I he has like some silly takes on things. So he's good enough as a comedic actor, but then there's also some like very emotional parts that can also pull through.
Yeah.
And then Pedro Pascal gave a really over the top performance, but it really worked for the character.
Right, it worked for the character. I think Pedro Pascal was just having fun. Like, oh, I get to be someone like who's not such like a serious, brooding character.
Yeah.
You know, which is great. Like, I like Pedro Pascal. I like to think he had fun making this.
He looked like he did.
Also, I will say this too. Like, this is kind of a similar issue as like the show, doesn't establish its own rules problem, but like there's a lot of stuff, you can overlook some things that you're like, all right, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in these sorts of movies, but there's a lot of things in this that you're like, well, no, okay, no, that doesn't, well, that wouldn't, they wouldn't be there, that wouldn't have this, that.
Yeah, and
of
some of that's real world stuff.
Right.
When you get into like the movie has to be grounded in the real world in a lot of ways, and we can get to that in the spoiler section.
Right. I'll get to specifics in the spoiler stuff. But yeah, there was, and it's like you can look past some of that stuff in these kinds of movies, but there's a point where you're like, okay, this is just
totally
like it's complete fantasy at this point.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's.
And people are like, but it's a comic movie. What's the big deal? Like, if nothing's grounded in reality, then there's no stakes.
Right, exactly.
Then you can just have anything you want happen because there's no stakes. If you're not expecting something to happen a certain way because of your experience in the real world,
there's no stakes.
Then there's no stakes.
Everything's
anything can just happen the way anyone wants, and you don't have to worry about it.
They're just gonna lazy writing, Deus Ex Machina it, and. There's no there's no coming back from that. Like, there's no writing a good story out of
so
no rules.
Every movie, every science fiction, fantasy, superhero movie has to have rules established for all the stuff that is not real.
Right.
So we know how it works, and we know, at what point it could fail. And things that are set in ostensibly like the real world, but with superheroes, you gotta have it grounded in reality. Otherwise, nothing's wondrous.
Yeah, and there's one thing in particular that I've seen multiple people bring up that just really didn't make any sense. And I'll get into that in the spoiler part specifically. But
so, are we ready for the spoilers?
I think so. I will say this. So if you haven't seen Wonder Woman and you want to go see a movie in theater, go see News of the World.
Unless you're going to take a kid, because the kid's not going to sit through that movie.
That's true. Then go see The Croods.
You have to have an adult sensibility to sit through News of the World.
That's true.
It's a slow roll. It's a really good movie.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, so I do think that this deserves the 5.5 out of 10 stars it has on IMDb at the time of recording. To me, I definitely disliked it more than you did.
Yeah, I didn't think it was very good. I don't care if I never see it again. There were parts that I was like, okay, this is fun, this is neat. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of problems with the movie.
Yeah, so yeah, like I said, I put this tied with, in my opinion, it's tied with Justice League, as far as like.
Yeah, I would have to see Justice League again to really like place it relative to Justice League.
All you ever seem to remember from that movie is my man.
Yeah, well, that's the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been I've only seen Justice League like the one time. It's been whenever it was in theaters. So to properly place this in relation to Justice League, I would have to see that again, I think.
Can you safely say it was worse than Man of Steel?
Worse than Man of Steel? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So it In that
I
case,
remember kind of liking Man of Steel.
right? So in that case, it's either going to be equal to or a little better than Justice League. Because I assume for you, bottom is Suicide Squad, right? And then Justice League.
So, if it weren't for like the first like third of Suicide Squad, then that would be like lower.
Well, so you like Suicide Squad more than Justice League?
I don't know. Like again, I would need to watch Justice League again.
Oh,
I remember not really liking Justice League and having a lot of problems with it. I remember, but I remember Suicide Squad liking like the first third of it.
Yeah, but the rest of it's so bad.
Yeah, the rest of it's awful.
So yeah,
I don't know if that first third makes up for anything.
To me, Suicide Squad.
If the other 2/3 are so awful that they drag that first third down.
That's how I see it, from what I remember. So to me, that first Suicide Squad is bottom, then Justice League, and this sort of tied, and then above that's probably Man of Steel, then Aquaman, Shazam, and.
What about Birds of Prey?
Oh yeah, Birds of Prey is technically in this universe, huh?
Yeah, I thought Birds of Prey was better than most people gave it credit for. I don't think it was really a Birds of Prey movie. It was a Harley Quinn movie.
Well, that's why they added the subtitle, right?
Right. But as far as it being a Birds of Prey movie, it fell far short of that. But I thought Birds of Prey was a decent movie.
Yeah.
So I think the first Wonder Woman
is top.
And then
I put Shazam and Birds of Prey kind of tied.
Yeah, they're kind of tied, and then like Aquaman, which I think was a better movie than I was expecting. That's why I kind of put it up higher on the list, because I was expecting just
You're expecting an Aquaman movie.
Yeah, I was expecting an Aquaman movie, and I got that Aquaman movie, which was, turns out it was better than it had any right to be. Still not a great movie.
Yeah.
I still think it's worse than almost all Marvel movies.
Yeah, almost all. Because, man, Thor 2 is...
Yeah, Thor 2's not great. So, yeah, I think Aquaman is still worse than most Marvel movies, but it's still pretty good for a DC movie.
Yeah. But, yeah, then Man of Steel.
So, what about Batman v Superman? Is that better or worse than Justice League?
That was better than Justice League.
Okay. I think that was a movie that did a poor job of explaining characters' motivations.
Yes. Well, they were trying to put too much into that movie.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, another problem with this movie, it's 2.5 hours long.
It didn't really need to be.
It's about 30 minutes longer than it really needed to be. Like, we hit a point in the movie, and I leaned over to you, and I was like, hey, we got 40 minutes left in this movie.
And I was like, because when you said that, it was a scene that looked like it was hitting the climax.
Right. And then it cuts to another character, and you were like, oh, I forgot we were dealing with this, too.
Yeah. There's quite a bit in there. So, yeah, let's just move on to the spoilers. I think we've kind of given our opinion on the quality of this movie.
So the big thing that I've seen, like, the most complaints about of people going like, what, that in particular doesn't make sense, is the plane they steal from the Smithsonian. All right, so that whole scene is just like one why question after another.
So it's funny because it was a solution to a real world problem, but then their solution was bad.
Right.
So their solutions, they need to get from Washington D.C. to Egypt, but
trying to catch up with the bad guy.
Steve Trevor doesn't have a passport, except, okay, let's take a step back, and he might. Here's the thing: did they bother to look? Because the way Steve Trevor comes back to life is Wonder Woman wishes for him to come back to life on a magic rock, which is the MacGuffin of the whole movie. In reality, like this leads to everything in the movie. This magic rock that grants a wish,
but it's a monkey's paw.
But it's a monkey's paw. They even use that term in the movie. It grants a wish. It's like you get your wish, but there's always a price. And so the way Steve Trevor comes back to life is his consciousness is put into the body of this guy who's already alive. So he subverts this guy's life. And we thought, well, that was the price.
Is that
First of
dude
all, at
dead?
that point, we didn't know there was a price.
Right.
But I'm like, so wait, everyone's okay, or the two of them, they're the ones who know, the two of them are okay with him just like erasing this guy's existence to be Steve Trevor? But did they look to see if that guy had a passport?
Yeah.
He might have had a passport, and they could have gone under his identity.
Right.
But they're like, well, we can't get you on a plane to Egypt because you don't have a passport. So they steal a jet
Right.
from the Smithsonian,
So
where Wonder Woman works at the Smithsonian.
Okay.
Here's the thing: she works at the Natural History Museum.
Right. At the
So how does
Smithsonian.
she should not have access because she waives her ID and gets access into the Aerospace Museum.
Not just to do the Aerospace Museum, but the behind the scenes area, like
the hangar where they have the hangar where they have
Aerospace
like
Museum.
yeah.
And so she gets in, and you're first like, wait, what? And then they pick out this jet, and it's this like side by side. I don't even know what it was.
I don't know. Did the U2 have two?
That wasn't a U2 though.
No.
No, the wings weren't nearly big enough.
Yeah.
But
I didn't
no,
get a good look at it before they turned it invisible.
yeah.
So
Which isn't actually one of the problems we had with it.
no, I don't really have a problem with this invisible. This is how they fit the invisible jet into the movie.
Right, so it's this. Man, I think it was some Russian thing, but anyway, so they get in this plane, and you're like, okay, so the plane, they could just have access to the plane, okay. Oh,
wait, there's fuel.
There's fuel in the plane? Not just fuel in the plane. There's fuel in the plane sufficient to fly the thing to Cairo from Washington D.C. All right.
So they take off, and then
there's guys in the tower at this airport that's not a functioning airport.
it's just a landing strip for them to move planes in and out of their museum. And so there would only be people in the tower when they need to move planes in and out of the museum.
It's just like one thing after another. Oh, also, Steve Trevor. Oh yeah, he's a pilot who flew biplanes.
Right.
That's
and he
like,
just can figure out how to fly
that's
a jet.
like I drive a car. Surely I could just hop in an F1 and drive that, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be confused as hell by the 8,000 buttons that are on the dash.
Right, but he hops in and just figures out how to fly this jet. Any pilot will tell you that flying a prop plane versus a jet plane, very different.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact that he's just like going around is like, okay, let's see. Nope, that button didn't turn it on. That button didn't turn it on. Oh, third time's the charm. This one turns it on.
Yeah. I'm certain there are lots of gauges on there that did not exist in any plane that he ever flew.
Yeah.
In the early part of the 20th century. But, okay. So he flies the plane, takes off, and then so Wonder Woman's like, oh, I forgot to tell you about radar. Because radar didn't exist when he was flying planes. And so she uses some magic thing, like... So her father is the person who put up the magic spell that keeps their island invisible to the outside world.
Yeah.
So he taught her how to turn things invisible, and so she turns the jet invisible. And she makes some joke about the only other thing she'd ever turned invisible was a coffee cup, and she couldn't find it afterwards. But anyway, so that's how they squeeze in the invisible jet. So, which is fine. Like reason, okay, that's fine. I don't care about that.
And then they fly.
But just the whole how did you get into this flight line at the Smithsonian to take this jet?
Right, and then there's some things that
they possibly had enough fuel to get on a trip back to America.
Oh
they
yeah,
flew the jet back to America.
They flew the jet back, so I don't know how they. I mean, how would you fuel that up in Cairo, especially after the state Cairo was in when they left?
Yeah.
So okay, but there's a number of things here that are like. I wish they would have established something better because it just seems to come out of nowhere. Like so, I practiced one time and I think I can turn this jet invisible. I wish they would have somehow shown that, maybe had her tried at the beginning when they have her on that doing the Olympics things. Maybe at some point that they could have started that off with her attempting to turn something invisible and she can only do it on something real small or something. But it felt kind of Deus Ex Machina, because it's just sort of like, oh, by the way, I have this power, I think. Let me give it a try. All right, and then they take off, and then it's like they look out the window, the canopy, and like, oh, fireworks. Oh, right, it's the 4th. I forgot. I'm like, why? I wish that at some point there just would have been like a news broadcast that would have been like, festivities are underway for...
Or just show, like, 4th of July decorations on the buildings and
stuff. Yeah, show people in picnicking in the park for, like, with, like, 4th of July stuff going on or something. I wish they just would have established that rather than just, oh, we want fireworks. We want this scene where they fly this jet through fireworks, so we have to set it on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Which isn't a problem that it's set on the 4th of July. It's just... this is the first time we heard about it. It just seemed very contrived and out of nowhere.
Right. So, we were talking about, like, establishing rules for things. So, there's this magic rock that grants a single wish to any person, but there's always a cost. So, it doesn't explain that there's a cost at first. And then once we learn that there's a cost, we think that the cost for wishing Steve Trevor back is that he basically killed a guy to do it.
Right.
We're like, okay, maybe that was the cost. But no, the cost is that Wonder Woman loses her powers. And they're fading. Except what we thought was going on because Barbara... Minerva, Cheetah, she wishes to be like... on the thing, she wishes to be like Diana because... she's seemed, from her perspective, this woman has the perfect life. She's beautiful and successful, and people like her and whatever. Except, so, yeah, she gets that, but she also gets the powers. And so when we see Wonder Woman's powers fading, our thought is, oh, are the powers transferring to Barbara? No, that's not the case. It turns out she's losing her powers as a result of her wish. But they didn't really explain that. And the way we first see her lose her powers when she tries to break open a lock on a door, the lock won't break, and she winds up just like ripping the locking mechanism off the latch off the door. We're like, okay, so it was strange that she couldn't break that. All right, but she did eventually, so she's still pretty strong. But then later in Egypt, there's this chase scene down this highway, and she winds up pushing this armored truck sideways, like it's from the side, down the highway.
Perpendicular to the
road at a very fast speed, like as fast
like
as the
she's
truck
keeping up with the other vehicles.
Like she's keeping up with the other vehicles, and I'm like, wait a minute, if she couldn't break that lock, how can she do this?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
So that was another issue of like, what are the rules here?
Yeah.
Then in that sequence, one of the things that I was saying is like, this is just dumb from a like just an action sequence point of view. There's a guy's got this. They have this machine gun mounted on the back of one of the trucks, and so he goes to shoot at Wonder Woman, and he fires, and this bullet misses her and flies past her, and she's like following it as it goes by, right? And it's all slow motion, and it's flying straight at Steve Trevor in the truck at the back of the convoy. And just before it hits the windshield, the lasso of truth catches the bullet out of the air and whips it out of the way.
Oh, so that's your stupid thing. I thought you were talking about the thing with the RPG.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So Steve Trevor launches an RPG. They're falling behind. They need to catch up. So Steve Trevor launches an RPG, and then Wonder Woman lassos it, and then so she used that RPG to pull her through the air. Holding onto her lasso behind her while this RPG flies through the air.
When I was watching that sequence, I was like, all right, my mind was going through like different things that I thought were happening, that I'm like, all right, what stupid thing is this going to turn out to be? And when he's like holds up the RPG round, I was like, great, dude, what are you doing with that? And then he starts loading it.
And do you know what it is?
Right, and do you know what that is? And then he starts loading it. I'm like, oh, okay, so
He's gonna fire
He's
it.
gonna fire it. Oh no!
And he launches it straight up
he's
in the
not
air.
like mounting it on his shoulder or anything. He fires it straight up in the air, and I was just like,
Watch your feet.
well, yeah. I mean, there's that, but I was like, my mind was like, wait, so is this thing gonna somehow be guided or something stupid? And then no, oh, okay, Wonder Woman lassoed the RPG. Okay, I thought she was just gonna be the fulcrum of this pivot. It was gonna just whip it down on top of the armored car or something.
That's what I thought was gonna happen.
Right, and then nope, it starts flying through the air with her, and I'm just like, nope, not having it.
So I remember early on when they established the Rock could grant wishes, and you're like, if she wishes Steve Trevor back to life on this rock, I'm out. And I'm like, I think that's happening, and it happened, and you didn't walk away, so. I guess because you had paid for tickets, so you're gonna.
Yeah, I paid for tickets, and I was your ride. I would have felt bad about just leaving you at the theater. So, but no, it was just like, yeah, like it was just like, oh, okay, this is gonna be stupid. Oh, it's gonna be stupid in a different way. Oh, it's stupid in a way I wasn't expecting at all. Actually, as it turns out,
this is a whole level of stupid I could not comprehend.
Right? Because I mean, who would have thought of that?
So. There were two sequences that Warner Brothers wanted Patty Jenkins to cut from the movie for time, and she refused to do it. And I think one of them kind of needed to be there, but the other one could have easily been cut out
or cut down considerably.
And the one of them was the opening.
They were both right at the beginning.
Yeah. So the opening sequence, though, it opens up on whatever the name of that island is, where the Amazons are, and Diana's a child, and it's like a Olympics thing going on, and she's competing in like the big, obstacle course basically. And so you go through that, and she's winning, except at one point they have to ride a horse down this trail,
and she's looking behind
her, and she turns around, and so she misses this tree branch, which knocks her off her horse. And so in order to catch up, she takes a shortcut to catch up to the horse, but it means that she misses. So along the way, they have to break these vials with colored smoke, and so when the smoke plume rises up, then back at where the stadium is, they can lower a flag to let people know when each contestant has gotten to a certain portion in the race, and so she misses one of those as a result. And then so when she's like riding in the front, I'm gonna look at who it was. It was not Hippolyta.
Wasn't it Robin Wright's character?
Yeah, it was Robin Wright's character. Grabs her and won't let her finish. And she's arguing, that's not fair. I was gonna win, and she's like, yeah, but you had to take a shortcut to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's the whole point of it was to teach her humility, and that there are no like shortcuts in life. You have to, there's a right way to do everything.
Yep.
And so that establishes that part of her personality. So I think that it kind of needed to be there. I think some of it could have been cut out or cut down a little bit, maybe. For time.
There was definitely a lot of it there.
It was a fairly long sequence. The other part was the mall fight scene, which
has some of the dumbest shit I've seen in an action sequence of a superhero movie.
A lot of the sequence could have been cut out. And what it does is it establishes that there is a jewelry store, which is a front for a antiquities smuggling operation. And among these antiquities is that stone, the MacGuffin, wish-granting stone. So that part of it needed to be there, but all they needed to do was have the bad guys show up, steal these artifacts, which is what they do, and then all they need is like the police to stop them. Yeah. Because through the police and the FBI, that stone winds up at the Smithsonian, because all this stuff they need help identifying all this stuff.
Right.
To get it back to where it belongs. But so that's all it needed to happen. But in addition to that, because all that does happen, in addition to that, Wonder Woman comes in and fights them in the mall, and there's just a bunch of... It's not a very good action sequence. There's a lot of really corny, cheesy, campy stuff going
God,
on.
the like tossing the girl across the floor, like sliding along the tile into the giant teddy bear, and then like when she's like holding the dude up, and she like looks over at the girl and winks at her, and the girl winks like with her whole freaking head, and I'm just like, could no one have like directed this girl
on how to wink?
On how to wink? Seems like that should have been Patty Jenkins's job, right? So, yeah, it's just the whole thing, and like the whole thing just, and I mean, even just like not just that, but like some of the moves that she does were like very like campy 80s action movie, and I was just like,
okay, so my understanding from what I've heard is a lot of that is intentional because it's set in 1984. They're like, let's make it like an 80s movie.
There's a reason why those types of movies stayed in the 80s.
Yeah, that's true.
Like they don't make movies like Commando anymore.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Right. So yeah, like most of that, if not all of it. I mean, like I said, the little bit that shows how the artifact, and they didn't even necessarily need that. All they needed to happen was the stuff shows up at the Smithsonian, like, hey, all this stuff was confiscated by the FBI from a smuggling ring, and we need to identify it. Yeah, they didn't need any of the mall stuff. Actually,
in that stuff at the like that was immediately, or in that sequence that was leading up to that, when it's like going around the city and you're seeing all these things that are just establishing the time period. They could have had like on the TV a Duke's broadcast about the cops busting some antiquity smuggling ring.
Right.
That's all. Like that would have been enough.
And so that would have cut it like 10 minutes out of the movie or something, if they had removed all that.
At least.
The mall stuff. Anyway, so yeah, they could have cut things down, and that it just would have been a better way to deal with it, I think. Yeah. And this is also a time when Wonder Woman's still trying to keep the fact that she even exists secret. So she like first thing she does is she uses her headband to take out all the security cameras.
Right, Oh, so that's the other thing too, is like Wonder Woman causes a lot of collateral damage in this fight. I mean, she completely destroys a police cruiser.
Yeah. Drop someone on it?
She drops several someones on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that whole thing was just whew. So I was gonna say, going back to the, I wish that they would have established some things so they didn't feel like they just were like, oh well, that's convenient. I wish that they would have maybe started out, with her like hunting down that armor.
Oh yeah, she's got this golden armor that belonged to whatever the ultimate badass Amazonian from back before they hid themselves from the world. And she just mentions like in passing, she just mentions in passing, like, oh yeah, I found that. That's cool. I went searching for it when I came to the world of men. Oh, that does lead me into was it after the credits or partially through the credits?
Partway through the credits.
Partway through the credits. So there's this scene, and it's kind of a neat little nod to the fans of Wonder Woman from way back when, and this shows this woman from behind, like walking through this. There's like some citrus festival or something going on.
Yeah.
And this pole, for whatever reason, like falls and almost crushes this like some people, and she just catches it and stands up. And you think like, oh, this is Wonder Woman, right? Because it's just you just see the long black hair from behind and everything. And then this woman's like, "How do I thank you?" And she turns around and it's Linda Carter.
Right.
Who? So she's Asteria. That was the name of the character. And she's like, "Oh, I've been doing this for a long time," or something like that. Like,
she says something about like, oh, it's a matter of shifting balance of weight or something.
Yeah,
gives some bullshit on how she's able to do it. But yeah, and then she's like, the woman's like, yeah, at least let me know your name, so I can thank you. She's like, oh, it's Asteria, and you're like, oh, okay, so that was that was the ultimate badass warrior whose armor that was.
Right. But the fact they used Linda Carter, who played
Right.
Wonder Woman in the old TV show, I thought that was like, okay,
That was cool.
that was cool for, the people who are fans of that show and stuff. You know, that was neat. So anyway, yeah, I don't know, anything else to cover?
This movie was kind of a mess. I think part of the issue is Zack Snyder was one of the main story writers on the first one, and I think that was to make sure that it tied in correctly to what was being done with the other DC movies.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Because there were references in, was it Justice League? Or no, it was Batman v Superman, when Bruce Wayne is hunting down like the other members, and he finds them from like photos of Wonder Woman like through like over the past 100 years.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think that the purpose of that was to make sure that sort of stuff sort of tied in.
Yeah, and so I think though that having Zack Snyder help write your superhero movie is a benefit.
Yeah.
For it would have been a benefit on this movie anyway. But yeah, like just it was a mess.
Yeah, I think this movie could have been made a lot better if it had some more revisions to the script to tighten things up, or to remove some extraneous things, or find better results to issues. I mean, I think I've forgotten a lot of the problems. Like, if I sat here and thought about it, we could go all night with just some stuff, and that's just lazy writing or poor execution of things. And so I don't want to spend too much more time on it. There's just this movie has a lot of problems that I think could have been fixed. I think this movie could have been a pretty decent movie.
Also, can we
even a good movie if they just had a few more draft changes?
Also, can we stop with the "oh, wow, you random female character, you look so pretty and confident now. What happened? I took my glasses off."
Yeah.
Can we stop with that?
That was kind of an 80s movie trope too.
Yeah, I know.
The ugly girl was the exact same girl. You turn the ugly girl into the pretty girl by taking her glasses off and maybe combing her hair a different way or something. But
yeah,
it was, that's all it was. And I'm like, it's kind of a dumb trope.
Yeah. So anyway, what's our next movie? Probably there's something in February.
I don't think we still have to watch Soul.
Yeah, we still have to watch Soul. But I mean, as far as like theater experiences, yeah, I don't think there's anything else this month. But next month should be, what was it? I swear there was something. Nobody.
That's it.
Yeah, with Bob Odenkirk. So that looks like kind of a dumb action movie, but it looks like it'll have better action sequences than this one did.
Yeah.
So that's other than Soul, like that's probably our next like theater movie that we're gonna see. Although I can't wait till Heaven comes out because I'm already tired of that trailer.
That looks really bad.
Yeah. So yeah, and hopefully I still think DC or Warner Brothers hasn't officially announced like what the release schedule is going to be, have they? Well, they got Kingsman slated for March 12th. So that might be actually the next thing after Nobody that we see. Hopefully that doesn't get pushed again because Oh, I really want to see that movie. Oh, yeah. Is Morbius still coming out in March?
I don't know.
Hopefully. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of really all that's coming up because
Morbius leads into a new Blade movie.
I've heard they are making a new Blade movie.
Oh yeah,
It's got Mahershala Ali in it.
Yeah, it's Blade.
Yeah. But yeah, so hopefully the movie release schedule doesn't get jacked up any more than it already has. Hopefully once everyone gets vaccinated, or a large chunk of people get vaccinated, people feel safe to go to the theaters again and just be like so desperate to go to the movies, they're gonna go in droves, and then the studios will be like, oh man, I don't even know what to release. We just don't have enough movies for all these people going to the theaters.
One can hope.
But that's not gonna happen. They know exactly what to release because they have all of last year's to release. So, but yeah, so until next time.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Toodles.